piano was when I was 6 years old, and my mother brought my brother and I an upright piano. It was a very old piano, it wasn't very good, but my brother and I, we used to really enjoy improvising tunes. We used to improvise little melodies, and eventually my mother was able to get us piano lessons to make us sound better. And yeah, I really enjoyed those piano lessons, and I love performing music, I love sharing music with others, and I hope that it's something that I can continue to do for the rest of my life. As a pianist, as a performer, I have to spend a lot of time practicing, and practice can be difficult, especially for a pianist. It's quite a solitary thing, but I've always been lucky to have had very good guidance from my teachers on how to practice, and also to be careful not to practice, not to over practice, because this can lead to firstly injury, which isn't very good, but also just becoming tired of the pieces that you're playing, which isn't very good. But I think what I use my practice for is taking apart the pieces, dissecting them, really diving into the music and analysing it, so that when it comes to performance, everything comes naturally, everything is subconscious, because during performance this is what you have to do, and the goal of practice is to ingrain the music into your subconscious memory. I really enjoy visiting Indonesia. I enjoy performing in Indonesia. Actually, I think it was last June was my first performance in Indonesia. I hadn't visited Indonesia for a long time. I think before that performance in last June, the last time I was in Indonesia was about 10 years before that. So it was really nice, firstly, to be back in my mother's home country, but also to be here sharing music with people. And I think since then I've given, I think it's 4 performances in Indonesia, in Bali and Jakarta. And the audiences here are very, very warm. And it's also really nice to see young people in the audience. There's a lot of young faces. And there's a lot of enthusiasm for the music. And I really hope that I can continue and that I can do more in Indonesia, not just in Jakarta, but also other cities. I think that being a classical musician, it's an interesting career path. There's no set route. For example, if I wanted to become a doctor or something, I'd go to school, I'd do my university, I would do certain exams, and I would eventually become a doctor. With classical music, that's not the case. There's so many different ways to become a performer, and also performing isn't the only thing that you can do. You can become a teacher, even music therapy is very popular at the moment, but to become a performer, it's very difficult to find a balance between social life, between my school life, like my academics, and also my piano practice. I remember from a young age, it was always difficult to balance like homework, to balance going to school for 8 hours a day, and then after I've done my homework, after I've done school, I only have like 2 hours in the evening when I can practice, and that's really difficult when I'm preparing for competitions, when I'm preparing for concerts. So when I was 13, I decided that, with my parents of course, that it would be best for me to leave sort of normal school and go to homeschooling instead. And for me, this was the best decision, because it could mean that I could focus on my music 100%. I could focus on performing and practicing. And I think if I had not made that decision, I would not be performing like I am today. I would not have been able to take this as a career, because it's so demanding on my time. I mean, I think in terms of my piano playing and like my piano development, it didn't really make any difference. But in terms of, well, actually when I first took those videos, I didn't post them because I was a very self-critical 10-year-old, I guess, and I didn't think the playing was at the best of my ability. But a few years later, I decided that why not post them, and the reaction it got from people was really wonderful. I think that, well, firstly, when I was there, when I was playing, people stop and listen because it's a very unusual thing to see, firstly, classical music being played on a piano in public like this. People aren't used to seeing this. And then the music being played by a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old, it's a really unusual thing. And I think many people, firstly, when I actually took those videos, they were all stopping and listening, which was really nice to see. And I think also online, people are really interested in this sort of thing because it wasn't staged. I went with my dad to London. We knew that it was an art project and there were 50 painted pianos placed on the streets of London. And my father and I, we thought, okay, let's go play them and see what happens. And yeah, it was just a really nice thing to do when I was that age with my dad. And I think lots of people really enjoyed it. I love to play both solo and with orchestra. They're two very different things. When I'm playing solo, I think it's a more intimate affair with the audience. You can really create special colours that, of course, playing with orchestra is a very colourful thing, but you can really go quiet, you can really create those intimate moments. Whereas when I'm playing with orchestra, there's a couple of things. One, it's really nice to be on stage with other musicians. You have that spontaneity if you have a good connection with the conductor, if you had a good connection with the other players, it can be really fun. And then, of course, there's the sound. There's a lot more variation in sound when you have these different instruments. The colors you can create with different soloists in the orchestra, it can be really interesting. And so I can't say which I like better, but they're two very different things for me. There's a lot of pianists, there's a lot of musicians that I look up to. The pianists that I listen to the most, I think, are probably 20th century pianists like Horowitz, like Gilels, another one of my favorites. But I think the people who inspire me the most they've always been my teachers. It's really important when you're developing to have good guidance, to have support from my family, of course, is really important, but to have guidance from those teachers is something that's invaluable to me, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. My first piano teacher was really inspirational for me. She really taught me to love music, to love playing the piano, and if you don't have this initial love for what you're doing, I think it's impossible to become a good musician. I've been very lucky throughout I'm at the beginning of my career, but throughout my career to have had opportunities to play in some really wonderful places. I think the highlight would probably be my becoming a laureate of the Tchaikovsky competition. This is a competition that I've looked up to since I was, 10 or 11 years old, and to be awarded the silver medal is a really great honor for me. But I don't usually think of my career like that. I usually think of it as every performance is just as important. Every performance is special. It has its own unique atmosphere. And I think that if you start thinking of some performances as more important than others, I think it's not a very good thing. I try to treat each one as if it's my last. I like to practice before a big performance. I think good preparation is really important. If you haven't done your practice, or if I've if I'm doing a performance and I haven't had enough time to practice the pieces, it's not a great feeling. So practice is number one. I like to keep a calm mind on stage. I think that most performers, you have these physical changes, like you have more adrenaline in your body, your heart rate goes up, and I think keeping a calm mind when you have adrenaline, when you have a raised heart rate, is really important. So I just try to keep a calm mind, do everything slowly on the morning of the concert. Well, it's not always possible. Sometimes when I'm traveling and doing a lot of performances in a row, the travel schedule can be really demanding, but I do try and just chill out before a performance. There's a big difference between my practice, between preparing for a concert and actually playing a concert. When I'm practicing, I try to think of everything more deliberately, more consciously about what I'm doing with the music. And I think that's important, to always be aware of why you're practicing, to always have a goal in your practice. I think that's essential to good practice. When I'm on stage, when I'm performing, I think it's the opposite. I think that the subconscious memory is very powerful. And on stage, for me, what works is just letting my subconscious take over, letting everything come naturally, all my practice, everything that's become ingrained in my mechanical memory. I try to just let this out during performance. And for me, that works better. I think it means that I can relax in performance, I can enjoy myself more on stage. I always try to enjoy myself on stage. I think that's important for the musician, also for the audience, and it's how I perform best. I admire composers very much. I think it's very difficult to be a composer, especially in today, the 21st century. There's already so much good music, and it's always becoming harder and harder to come up with something original. And when I think of something original, maybe I'll start composing. But at the moment, I think my focus is on performing music that's already been written. I think it's important for musicians to play some contemporary music to support living composers. But for me, no composing at the moment. Classical music is, as I said before, it's a difficult career, and it requires many hours of practice. Always, you have to analyze scores, you have to do what your teacher says. It's a lot of work, and sometimes it can be a little overwhelming, but I think enjoying music is something that people often forget, especially students. When you have exams, you're working very hard, but I think it's really important to enjoy yourself on stage, to enjoy the music that you're playing, because I always say that if you don't enjoy the music, if you don't enjoy the performance, it's impossible for the audience to enjoy the music that you're playing. Thanks everyone for coming to my concert, and thank you to Padma for inviting me. I always enjoy my time here in Bali, and I really hope I can visit again very soon.